My name is Elena Carter. I'm 38 years old. And the day I signed my divorce papers, I walked out of the lawyer's office with nothing but the clothes on my back and a $10 bill in my pocket. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't ask for the house, the car, the savings, or the dog. Because I knew something my husband didn't. Nothing he owned was worth losing myself over. That night I called my best friend and said, "Book the backyard. I'm throwing a party." She laughed. "For what?" "For my divorce," I said. "The day I got my life back." The party was simple. String lights, margaritas, my grandmother's old speaker playing Dolly Parton, and 12 women who'd all been told they were nothing without a man. When my ex showed up, uninvited, furious, he saw me dancing barefoot in the grass, laughing like I hadn't in 10 years. He asked, "Why are you celebrating?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Because I finally left you. And for the first time in my marriage." He had nothing to say. I didn't grow up wanting to be a wife. I grew up wanting to be seen. My mother used to say, "A good woman doesn't ask for more than she's given." So I gave everything. I gave up my job when he said I was distracting him at work. I gave up my friends when he said they were too loud. I gave up my name, legally changed it to Carter, because he said it sounded more American. And when he left, he didn't take the house. He didn't take the savings. He didn't even take the dog. He took my voice. And I let him. For years I believed love meant shrinking. That being a good wife meant being silent. That if I smiled enough, held his hand long enough, loved quietly enough, he'd finally notice I was still there. But on the day I signed the papers, with nothing in my hands and no one to blame, I realized I didn't lose a marriage. I found myself. And that's why I threw the party. Not to hurt him. Not to prove I was fine. But to say out loud to every woman who ever whispered, "Maybe if I tried harder." You don't need permission to be whole. You don't need a man to be enough. And you don't need a reason to celebrate your freedom. If you've ever stayed silent, if you've ever apologized for taking up space, if you've ever thought your worth was tied to someone else's approval, this is for you. If this story moved you, like this video. Subscribe for more stories of women who walked away and danced anyway. Comment your city. I read everyone. You're not alone. Because here we don't cry over what was lost. We raise a glass to what we finally found. I didn't sign the papers with a pen. I signed them with a ballpoint marker, the kind they give you at the DMV. He brought it to me. "It's all you need," he said. "The rest is already yours." I knew he meant the opposite. We sat across from each other in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and regret. He looked tired. Not guilty. Just done. I looked at my hands. They were the same hands that cooked his meals, wiped his tears, held his mother's when she died. They didn't look like the hands of a woman who'd given up everything. But they were. He offered me the house. I said no. He offered the car. I said no. He offered the savings, $87,000. The money we'd saved for a trip to Italy, the trip I never took because he said, "We'll do it next year." I said no. He paused. Then he asked, "Why?" I looked out the window. There was a little girl outside, maybe 5 years old, holding a balloon shaped like a unicorn. She laughed. She didn't care if she had a house or a car or a dad who stayed. She just existed. And I thought, that's what I want to be again. Because I don't want to be the woman who fights for things, I said. I want to be the woman who walks away from them. He didn't understand. But I did. For 15 years I'd been training myself to be small. I stopped painting because he said it was self-indulgent. I quit my job as a graphic designer because he said clients didn't take me seriously with that kind of job. I even stopped calling my mother on Sundays because he said she made me sad. I gave up everything, not because I wanted to, but because I thought love meant disappearing. The day I found out he was sleeping with his assistant, I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I just made his favorite dinner, steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and ate it alone at the kitchen table while he was out working late. I didn't pack. I didn't scream. I just waited. Because I knew. If I fought, he'd win. But if I walked away, he'd have to face what he'd done. The lawyer asked if I wanted to file for alimony. I smiled. I don't need money to be free. He looked at me like I was broken. I looked at him like I was finally whole. When I signed my name, Elena Carter, I didn't feel empty. I felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying bricks in my chest for years. And now I set them down. No one gave me permission to do it. I just did. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of the empty house, the one I'd spent 15 years making beautiful, and I whispered to the walls, "Thank you for holding me. Now I'm going to go find myself." I didn't know where I'd go. I didn't care. I just knew. I was no longer the woman who needed to be kept. I was the woman who chose to leave. I didn't send invitations. I sent texts. Just one line. "You're invited to my divorce party. Bring your own drink. And your truth." No RSVPs. No RSVPs needed. The backyard was simple. String lights. A table with margaritas, lemonade, and a cake that said in shaky frosting, "To the woman who stayed and finally left." I didn't decorate with red or black. I used yellow, the color of sunlight on a Tuesday morning. The color of waking up and choosing to breathe. 12 women showed up. Not friends. Not acquaintances. Women I'd met in parking lots after therapy. Women who'd whispered to me in grocery store aisles, "I'm scared to leave. I don't know who I am without him. What if I'm not enough?" They came without makeup. Without heels. Without pretending. One woman brought her daughter, 11 years old, quiet eyes too old for her face. She didn't say a word. Just sat beside me on the grass. I handed her a cup of lemonade. She took it. Then she whispered, "My mom says I'm lucky I don't have a dad." I didn't correct her. I just held her hand. At 8:17 p.m. the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. I stood up. Didn't look at the others. Walked to the gate. He was there. In a suit. Tie loose. Eyes red. He looked like a man who'd spent the last week trying to remember why he left. "Elena," he said. "I didn't know you were having a party." I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Just recognition. "I didn't know you'd come," I said. He stepped inside. No one spoke. No one moved. The music kept playing, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. But the air turned thick. I raised my glass. Not to him. To the women. To the ones who stayed silent too long, I said. To the ones who thought love meant losing themselves. To the ones who thought they needed permission to be free. I paused. Looked at him. Then I said, "To me." The woman who signed her name with a ballpoint pen. And walked away with everything. The room didn't cheer. They didn't clap. One woman started crying. Then another. Then all of them. And then, slowly they raised their glasses. One by one. Silent. But sure. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me, really looked like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as his wife. Not as his project. Not as the woman who never complained. As me. Then he turned. Walked out. Didn't look back. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch with the woman who brought her daughter. We didn't talk. We just watched the stars. At one point she asked, "Do you think he'll ever understand?" I said, "I don't need him to understand. I just needed to understand myself." And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. I found it in the drawer of his old desk, the one I hadn't touched since the day I moved out. It was tucked under a stack of unpaid bills behind a photo of us at the beach, smiling, arms around each other before we learned how to be quiet together. The envelope was unsealed. No stamp. No address. Just my name written in his handwriting. Elena. Like he'd practiced it 100 times. I sat on the floor. I didn't open it right away. I just held it. Like it was a heartbeat. Like it was something alive. When I finally read it, I cried, not because I was hurt, but because I finally understood. "Elena, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a man who wants to be forgiven. But I need you to know this even if you never read it. I didn't leave you because I stopped loving you. I left because I was afraid you'd finally see me and realize I never loved myself. You were the only person who never asked me to be more. You loved me in my silence. And I used that. I let you shrink so I wouldn't have to face how small I felt inside. I didn't cheat because I wanted someone else. I cheated because I needed to feel something, anything, that wasn't guilt. I thought if I made you small enough I'd stop feeling like a failure. But you didn't shrink. You just got quieter. And I didn't notice, until you walked away. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I didn't see me, I'm sorry I didn't love you enough to be worthy of you. I don't expect you to read this. I just needed you to know, you were never the problem. I was. Jay. I held the letter for a long time. Then I folded it back, put it in the envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter, where he'd find it when he came back. He never did. But I started writing back. Not to send, just to speak. Jay. I didn't sign those papers because I hated you. I signed them because I finally loved myself enough to leave. You didn't break me. You just showed me how much I'd broken myself trying to hold you together. I don't need your apology. I needed to hear it and I did. Now I'm going to live. Not for you. Not for anyone else. For me. I didn't burn it. I didn't keep it. I just put it in a shoebox with my wedding dress, my old journals, and the ballpoint pen I used to sign the divorce. I buried the box under the oak tree in the backyard. Not as a grave. As a seed. A week later, a woman from the party came over. She'd been married for 22 years. Her husband had Alzheimer's. She said, I used to think I was his keeper. Now I realize, I was his mirror. He saw himself in me, and he hated what he saw. I nodded. I knew exactly what she meant. I started writing again. Not for work. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I wrote about the girl I was before I learned to be quiet. The girl who painted murals on her bedroom walls. The girl who sang off-key in the shower. The girl who believed love was supposed to feel like sunlight, not like silence. One night I dreamed I was standing in front of a mirror. I looked like me. But behind me in the reflection stood two other women. One, the wife I became. One, the girl I was before. And they both looked at me. And smiled. I woke up crying. Not from sadness. From peace. I didn't need him to come back. I didn't need him to change. I didn't even need him to read the letter. I just needed to know. I wasn't the one who failed. I was the one who chose to rise. And that was always enough. I didn't go to his office to confront him. I went because I needed to see if the man I married was still there, or if he'd become someone else. I walked in at 3 p.m. He didn't recognize me. I wasn't wearing a dress. I wasn't wearing heels. I wore jeans. A faded blue shirt. My hair was tied back. No makeup. Just me. The receptionist smiled. Can I help you? I said, I'm here to see James Carter. He typed my name. Looked up. Mr. Carter's in a meeting. Can I take a message? I smiled. I'm his ex-wife. She froze. Then whispered. Oh. I didn't know you were, you. He came out 10 minutes later. Tie loose. Hair shorter. Eyes tired but not angry. Not sad. Just tired. He stopped. Looked at me. Didn't speak. I didn't speak either. We just stood there. Two people who used to know every breath of each other. Now strangers who remembered the same silence. He finally said, You look different. I said, You look like you're finally trying to be real. He didn't smile. But his shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding his breath for years. He invited me to sit. We sat in his office, the same one where he'd told me he needed space. Now the walls were bare. No family photos. No diplomas. Just a single plant on the windowsill. A snake plant. He said, It's alive. I didn't kill it. I laughed. He looked surprised. Then he laughed too. He asked why I came. I told him about the party. About the women. About the letter. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he opened his desk drawer. Took out a folded piece of paper. It was the same letter. The one I left on the counter. He hadn't thrown it away. He'd kept it. I read it every night, he said. I thought if I read it enough, I'd learn how to be the man you deserved. He looked at me. I don't know if I'm there yet. I said, You don't have to be. He asked, Why didn't you hate me? I said, Because I hated the version of you I let myself believe in. But I never hated you. I just stopped believing in the story we were telling. He asked if I was happy. I said, I'm not trying to be happy anymore. I'm trying to be whole. He nodded. Like he finally understood. When I left, he didn't hug me. Didn't say goodbye. Just stood at the door and said, Thank you for not letting me disappear. I didn't turn around. But I whispered just to the air. Thank you for letting me find myself. That night, I called the woman from the party, the one with the daughter. I said, I saw him today. She asked, "Did you feel anything?" I said, "No. Not sadness. Not anger. Just peace." She paused, then said, "That's the real victory, isn't it? Not when you leave, but when you stop looking back." I looked out the window. The sun was setting. The sky was orange, the color of a new beginning. I didn't need to go back. I didn't need to fix him. I didn't need to prove I was better. I just needed to keep walking. And I did. I went back to the house the day after the solstice. Not to take anything. Not to say goodbye. Just to remember. The lawn was overgrown. The paint on the porch was peeling. The door creaked when I opened it, just like it always had. I walked through every room. The kitchen where I cooked his meals. The bedroom where I slept with my back turned. The living room where we watched TV in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just remembered. I found the shoebox under the bed. The one with the wedding dress, the ballpoint pen, the letter, the photo of us smiling on the beach. I sat on the floor and opened it. I took out the dress. It was yellowed. The lace was frayed. I held it to my chest. And then I let it go. I didn't burn it. I didn't give it away. I didn't keep it. I took it to the river behind the house, the same one where we used to throw rocks when we were young. I tied the dress to a stone, and I let it sink. It didn't float. It didn't fight. Just went under. I took the letter next. I read it one last time. Then I folded it again, put it back in the envelope, and left it on the kitchen table, where he'd find it if he ever came back. I didn't need him to read it. I just needed to know I'd written it. I took the ballpoint pen, the one I signed the divorce with, and I threw it into the river too. It didn't make a splash. It just disappeared. I didn't take anything else. Not the silverware. Not the books. Not the dog's collar. I didn't need them. I only took the photo of us on the beach. The one where we were smiling. Where we were real. I kept it in my pocket. That night I didn't go home. I stayed in a motel just one night. I ordered room service. Sat by the window. And drank a glass of wine. I toasted. Not to him. Not to the past. Not to freedom. I toasted to the woman who didn't know how to say no. And to the woman who finally learned how. The next morning I packed my bag. Left the key on the counter. Walked out. Didn't look back. The sky was clear. The air smelled like rain. I got in my car. The one I bought with my savings from the freelance work I started after the party. It was old. It was mine. I drove until the city disappeared. Until the road opened into fields. Until the only thing I could hear was my own breathing. I pulled over. Took out the photo. Looked at it. Then I smiled. Not because I missed him. But because I finally knew. I didn't lose a marriage. I found a life. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own fear, take it from me again. I didn't celebrate my divorce because I was angry. I celebrated it because I was free. I didn't need a house. I didn't need a name. I didn't need a man to tell me I was enough. I just needed to remember. I was enough before I ever said I do. And I'm still enough now. If you've ever stayed silent because you thought love meant shrinking. If you've ever given up your dreams because you thought someone else's happiness was more important. If you've ever felt like you had to earn your right to exist. Then this is for you. You don't need permission to leave. You don't need forgiveness to heal. You don't need a reason to be happy. You just need to choose yourself. One quiet, brave, unapologetic step at a time. You are not broken. You are becoming. And your freedom, it doesn't need a party. It just needs you. To show up. To speak. To live. Thank you for listening. Now go live.